Alright, hello people and welcome. I'm glad to the 15 or so people who have been waiting. Hello and welcome to another midnight live stream. Well, it's midnight here. So for those who are just joining us, what I used to do was at the end of every archery competition, I used to have a series called Archery Reflections, and that will contain my thoughts and experiences and reflections, basically logging my progress as an archer. Now, of course, over the past couple of years, I've been doing fewer and fewer competitions, so I've basically stopped doing the Archery Reflection series. Basically, now that I'm shooting a bit more this year, especially after the club suspension, having just done our club championship, I thought that this would be a good chance to talk about the process, and especially coming back from a long break, the sort of ups and downs, the mental challenges, and everything else which comes with learning archery. So, for those of us who are new, welcome to Archery Reflections, and like I said, this is the chance for me to talk about what's on my mind, especially in the immediate aftermath of the competition. And hello to our viewers. I see quite a few people waiting for the stream. Welcome aboard. Hello to everyone. We see Catherine, Everything Slow-Mo, interesting name you've got there. Byron Cook from the UK, is that right? Steph, thank you for confirming that the audio is sound, but the visual sounds okay. Raphael, Target Archery is fake news. It's been so much fun seeing the fallout from the whole Lars Anderson thing about whole fake archery, real archery. Fake archery should be a thing, actually. You know, like we have all these arguments about real archery, but we don't really understand what fake archery is. On a side note, I've been watching some of the older spotlight videos and documentaries on the older traditional shooters like Lajos Kasai, and everyone's like, oh my god, Lajos is not Lars Anderson. Holy crap. And like I thought people were pissing over Olympic archery. I didn't realize how much the traditional archery community was being attacked as well by the new wave of Lars Anderson viewers. But that's something from a completely different discussion. So what I want to go through today is, oh sorry Byron, you're Aussie. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so what I want to go through today is basically a short discussion on what happened at the club, in the club championship. I'll talk about the things I've learned from that, and I will then talk about, I'll leave the floor open to Q&A. I don't think this should be longer than maybe 20 to 30 minutes, so it's a short reflection. But the Q&A is always an interesting thing to do at the end, so let's stay tuned from that. So, what has happened? So today we ran our club championship. We normally do this in around May for the club, but for those who have been following the club drama, you know what's happened. For those who haven't, our archery club was suspended. There was a safety incident, and that was the epitome of 4 years of petitioning to our local council to restore the safety of the field. And unfortunately, it took a critical incident for the council to take action. So the club was suspended, and because of that, we basically couldn't use the outdoor range. So every single club event that was scheduled for 2017 was cancelled. It was scrapped, and we lost a lot of members because we couldn't shoot. So it was a pretty bad time. But it also brought up a chance to revitalize the club. So now that we have succeeded in restoring the back fence, and we've gone through a process where the safety procedures have been validated by the council, we're now shooting again. So we organized our club championship for today, or yesterday, but yeah, on Sunday. And that was the first club event, and it was quite a good organization. It was it was after we handed over to the new committee. I'm no longer president, so I stepped down. I didn't run for president again, so I allowed the club to organize the next event, and I was basically just behind the scenes and doing the paperwork and admin stuff, but not the presidenting stuff. So what we organized was a competition, a club championship, and there were a lot of new archers who haven't done a competition before, and of course there are lots of old archers who haven't done a competition for nearly years. So we needed a way to bring people to the event and bring people back to the club to shoot. So we originally picked what we call here a Horsham round, and a Horsham round is basically a 1440 round, so 144 arrows, and it starts at 40 meters. Now, we discovered on the day that the Horsham round was actually phased out. It's no longer a valid round in Australia. So we switched to the AA 40/1440, which is basically the same thing, but different distances. So the format for this round, and some people who don't know about the way club shoots work, is that every round has different distances or different target sizes and different numbers of arrows. So what the AA 40/1440 is, it's 36 arrows on 40 meters, 36 arrows at 30 meters. Both of these distances are shot on the large 122 centimeter face. Then it goes to the 30 meter and 20 meter distances, and these ones are shot on the 80 centimeter medium face. So again, it's 40 and 30 meters on the big face, and then 30 and 20 meters on the small face. It's a very generous round. I personally like what we call the Canberra rounds. That's known as the WA 6720. No, the 6900. That's 90 arrows on basically what's a large face. Those are very forgiving rounds and very fun to shoot. But because we have so many new members, people tend to be afraid of shooting longer distances because they're not experienced enough. They haven't qualified for a longer distance, so therefore they feel a bit more anxious about shooting, say, 50 meters or above. So we opted to go for a 40 meter maximum distance, and that allowed more people to have a go. And we had around, I think, 12 shooters, which is really good for a club of 20. So we had a very high turnout. We had barebow shooters, we had compound shooters, we had of course the recurve shooters, we had the intermediate junior shooters, and we had the senior shooters. So we had a very good representation, and some of the members had only been around for like 3 weeks or less. So it was really good to encourage people to have a go. People just jumped in and signed up, and we shot, and we had a lot of fun. Really, really good to see that all of us had fun, including me, and that's saying a lot, because I normally get stressed out by competition, and haven't done my first one. I normally get into these things with a certain degree of apprehension, because I used to take shooting very seriously, a bit too seriously, I think, and that's part of my growth process. And being out of the game for a few months has kind of refreshed that, and I've kind of reapproached this with a new growth mindset, which I think I will have to maintain in the months to come. So what are the major talking points for this reflection? I'll go through the questions a bit later. So firstly, I'm going to talk about weather and preparation. So it was a fairly warm day. I think today was around 30 degrees Celsius. There was a slight cool breeze, but it was a very, very sunny day. And as with typical warm weather, it does drain a lot out of you. Things you've got to learn, like for those who haven't competed before, make sure you stack up on the right foods firstly. So going in for eating breakfast is a very bad idea. You need fuel. You really need to prepare yourself for a long day, especially for a 1440 round. That is a 144 arrow round plus warm-ups and practice rounds. That's a lot of shooting. The standard qualifying round today is a 720 round, which is 72 arrows, and even the short rounds, like the Canberra rounds, are 90 arrows. You do have the slightly longer rounds, which are like 120 arrows, but 144 is like the longest round. And we've actually never had a 144 arrow round at the club before, I think. So it was really punishing for our new shooters who didn't have the stamina. You saw a lot of people like that. They went the distance, but they fizzled it out towards the end. You can see them really struggle. And I normally struggle with a 90 arrow round, so I know that the idea of stamina endurance was on my mind, because I normally wouldn't last that long. But that was a bit of a concern there. So being well prepared, hydration was a big problem. Again, you're in the open field. There's no shelter. The sun was baking. I mean, I'm fortunate that I tan easily. Those who are a bit more white than I am will turn pink very quickly, and that happened to a few of us. But yeah, things like sunscreen, hat, hydration. You cannot forget hydration. You've got to make sure you're overhydrated in a lot of ways. Again, these are the things which, when people say that archery is not an athletic sport, man, you stand in a field for like 5 hours and shoot and tell me it's athletic. It is very physical. You have to be well prepared. It's very good physical training as well. So yeah, so being well prepared for the weather was quite important, and also having some familiarity with the shot process and getting into the comfort zone before the competition was quite good as well. So a lot of us were shooting 40 meters, we were getting sight settings, and just generally shooting at a range which is beyond what we normally shoot for most of the new club members. So the next thing which I'm talking about is the feel of the shot, and that links into what I said before about physical conditioning. So remember, a 144 arrow round is long, as I said before. You are shooting 144 arrows. Let's say 150. I mean, if you include practice warm-up, say 160 arrows. Now remember that you are as an archer, you are pulling the bow back 160 times. And if you're shooting a 40-pound bow, that's 160 reps of 140 pounds. Sorry, 40 pounds. Well, that'd be like Hulk level. 160 reps of 40 pound. That is a lot of shooting. And again, that's when you recognize how intensive this is. I mean, it's not particularly extensive in terms of you're not running around, you're not playing like football or something, but you're doing one activity very intensively. That is something which you do need a lot of conditioning to do properly. So for a lot of us, as I said before, stamina was a problem, and you can tell as the day went on that we were getting tired. That is something which is undeniable for any archer. By the time you reach the end, you are tired. And for a competitive archer, you have to shoot your final arrow, your 144th arrow, in the same quality as your first arrow. And by the way, my first arrow sucked. It was like, it went off to the blue. It was like a 5 or something, but it came back, so that was a good thing. But yeah, so you need to be physically conditioned. So yeah, for a lot of us, we're out of practice for a long time. I've been out of practice for a long time, and getting back into it, I think was quite challenging. So that's my alarm clock. Okay, so apart from physical conditioning, the other thing that was a very big factor was mental conditioning, and this is the side which is not often talked about in archery. Physical conditioning is again very important for an archer. You need the strength to use your bow and the stamina to use it for the whole day, but the mental conditioning is so important. A lot of the time, especially for a 144 arrow shoot, you lose focus. Like mentally, you get fatigued. And I'll explain exactly how you can tell, right? So when you do a competition, you have to score, and there's electronic scoring, there's paper scoring, and you can tell when people are mentally fatigued when they can't add numbers up. Like the numbers on the page are just squiggly lines, they just can't add them. things like you have out of 60 you have like 10, 9, 8, 5, 5, 4, and what is routine elementary maths is something you can't do. Actually, the shooter who was sharing my target, and we had a laugh because at some point he added 100 points to my score. So he added an extra 100 to my score, and he didn't realize it. So we were cross-checking, and I thought he said like 120 or 184. So he was actually saying 200 and 284, and I didn't pick it up because it was kind of like score to 100. But by the end we were doing scores, and out of like 300 I scored 400, and it just didn't occur to him that he had made a fundamental like addition error. That was quite hilarious. But yeah, mental conditioning is such a big thing. So I had a few slumps during the day, but I recognized, from the experience that I had to focus a lot more. And again, that ties in with your conditioning, your hydration, your stamina, your confidence. So you have to go the distance, not just physically, but mentally. And the long rounds really push you. So mental conditioning is something which is often not taught, and it's something which people have to figure out on their own, but mental conditioning, mental training are very important. The third point, or the fourth point, which I'm going to talk about in more detail, is where things normally go wrong. I think this is where the heart of the reflection will be, because having come back from a long break, obviously a lot of things were on my mind. So what normally goes wrong for me in a competition, and today was actually a little different. I didn't suffer from the same problems I normally did, which is surprising because I am really bad in long tournaments. So obviously fatigue is one of the big problems, and obviously fatigue leads to poor form. Now, when I normally start the first quarter, the first third of a competition fairly confidently, and especially when you're shooting the longer distance first, that's a really good thing. So I normally shoot, if I'm shooting a camera round at say 60 meters, I normally do quite well at 60, relatively speaking. But yeah, I do notice that I start strong, and then I do really stupid things, and you don't realize this, but you know internally that you're doing something wrong. And I'll talk through a few things I normally do. One of the things that I tend to do when I'm fatigued is my shoulder rises quite significantly. So my front shoulder normally takes a lot of strain. In fact, the worst thing I did years ago was I did a club competition, and on the very first shot of the competition, I pretty much tore my rotator cuff. That was effing painful, but I still did the whole competition with the injured shoulder. That was back when I was a bit more young and reckless and a bit more motivated to shoot well, but oh my god, that was terrible. And that kind of like affected my mindset into future competitions, because like I basically messed up seriously on one shot on the first shot of the day, and having to like avoid that was like, don't do it. But the more you think about it, the more paranoid you become and the more you cause it. So I always have a very sore front shoulder because I often load too heavily on this shoulder, and again, because you get tired, you tend to compensate. So this arm gets tired, therefore you start leaning backwards, and that's that is a recipe for disaster. So that's something which I was trying to avoid, but having been out of training for a long time, I was quite worried about this front shoulder. That's something which is a common archery injury. The other thing I notice when I do when I shoot poorly with fatigue is that I tend to put too much pressure on my tricep here. So I tend to push out too much, and I get a lot of shake in the front arm because I'm using my muscles rather than my bone alignment. And again, when you are super tired, you just don't do the right thing. You can't quite get the right alignment. So things just don't work well. So my normal arm position when I'm tired, and you can see here, so when I start out, I normally go quite strong like that, but then when I get tired, the arm rotates inwards, the shoulder pops up, and this is only a few like centimeters, but that changes the alignment completely. I'm not sure you can see that there. I'm gonna move back a bit there. That's not gonna help. So that is the correct alignment there, like that. And then I often turn elbow inwards, shoulder pops up, and that's what it looks like. You actually see some of my my photos from previous competitions. I actually have a slightly turned in elbow. That's me doing it wrong. So I had to actually adapt my style and actually pay more conscious attention to the way I was holding my bow. And in fact, one of the things I'm going to talk about in a moment is bow grip. So yeah, like I said, the things I normally struggle with are arm alignment and shoulder alignment. This often pops up. Another thing I noticed today, and this is something I don't normally do, my right forearm was quite tense. So halfway through it started to cramp up into heat, and I couldn't actually pull the bow back. I've noticed this recently when I'm going back to training, because you don't normally put this under tension. Your tension's in your hand here, and you pull through your ankle there, and whoosh, like that, you release. But I was actually curling my wrist a lot, and there was a lot of pressure here and a lot of pressure here, and that's something which isn't right. You shouldn't have that much pressure in your hand. But yeah, I noticed this arm's getting tired. So yeah, there were quite a few things which I don't normally do well, and by the end of the day, I often do a lot of damage. Not a lot of damage, but I do damage to my front shoulder. That gets very sore. I can't lift it up properly. So those are signs which aren't quite right. But today I didn't feel that. Like I said, halfway through, this becomes an injury liability, and I shoot poorly because I'm too worried about it. Today I actually didn't feel this go upwards. I felt myself doing more of rotating the shoulder in like this, because I'm going to show you this again. One thing I noticed is that, especially on a hot day when your hand's sweating, your grip slips a lot. I've brought in a riser. This is the Samick Bear Hunter, and this is not what I use for competition, but I just want to demonstrate this. So I often show in my bow reviews a correct grip, which is something like this, and that's a fairly good grip. The knuckles are about 45 degrees to the horizontal, so it's actually, this is a nice grip. But again, when I get mentally tired, I often let my hand slip downwards this way, so I can't rotate my arm correctly, and my hand basically goes like this. It becomes more like a 60-degree thing, which is okay. But what I noticed tends to happen is that I can't shoot properly. Again, everything folds in, and the incorrect grip leads to incorrect arm elbow alignment, leads to incorrect shoulder alignment, and basically everything just falls apart. So what I actually did today is something which I've seen. I do see pro shooters do this, but it's something I don't normally do myself. I'm actually, like, you're told not to to apply pressure to the riser, so it should be an open grip. But what I was actually doing more of was actually turning my hand more inside. So the thumb was pushing more against the inside of the thumb rest here, and this forefinger was a bit more over here. So instead of being down here, it was more on top like that. It's not over the wrist. That's kind of stupid if the arrow's there. But I was intentionally trying to get my knuckles back up to 45 degrees. That's what I was trying to do. And when you're at full draw, you feel the bow sit more snugly here. It was in some ways an overcompensation for what I normally do, which is I slip back the other way. So I was trying to keep it up this way. It sat a bit high, so instead of being on this part of the hand, it was more on this part of the hand. So that was a little different than I'm used to, but my goodness, they helped me get through that clicker. Pushing through when you don't have the right grip is really difficult, because again, slippery hands, sweaty conditions. So what I found was when I pushed forward, I was basically torquing my hand would slip upwards, and I couldn't get through it. Like, it would just slip off this way. So by actually locking my thumb in here and keeping my index finger slightly here, so the rest of the hand was relaxed, when I get a full draw of a string, I felt that the bow would sit and push against here. So that was my solution to that huge problem that I had, and that again helped me get my shoulder alignment right. So I didn't over rotate my shoulder, I didn't push it up, so every time I drew it back, it actually felt right. And you know, I normally struggle with my front arm, so seeing my elbow correctly positioned, which you can't see from here, but actually getting it right there, that was a very, very big difference. And sometimes you realize you've been doing it wrong for the last year or so, and that's kind of what I realized. And in the heat of the competition, that kind of came out, and I felt that I probably pushed through better this way because I was using the correct alignment, and it was less stressful on my system. And the result was that when I finished the shoot and when I went home, I didn't feel absolutely wrecked in terms of my muscles. I felt extremely exhausted and dehydrated, but I normally collapse and sleep and just, you know, for the next 10 hours and wake up refreshed. But I felt completely fine after I rehydrated. It wasn't the muscles that let me down this time. So that was quite interesting. So yeah, that was the one thing I learned was I normally strain my shoulders, but today I paid more attention to my shoulder alignment, especially the bow grip, which leads to that effect of arm and shoulder alignment, and I came out with a lot more confidence that what I was doing was correct, and I did manage to push through. And as I mentioned before, like getting through the last millimeter of your clicker, that can be so hard when you don't have the right alignment, because you're like full draw and you're trying to push really hard, but you're like a whole centimeter off because your alignment's completely wrong. That was so important. But I felt today that because I was paying more attention to my shot process, I was I didn't, apart from a couple of really big errors, like I shot through my clicker once and I yanked the string a few times, I actually felt that I didn't make huge mistakes. And in my last state competition, I flung my arrows left all the time. It was so frustrating. But today, my mistakes were more compact. Apart from one or two really big mistakes, which happens in a long round, I was able to consistently shoot in the right area. Once I figured out where my sight was floating over the target, I just bring it up there, whack it in, and then pow, let it go. And that was what I was telling myself. My mindset going in was follow the process, trust the process. I always get freaked out by aiming, and this is kind of what you might call target panic. I focus too much on where the sight is and not what I'm doing. So what I told myself to do this time around was to forget the sight. This is something which a lot of archers will say to you, is forget the sight, it's not there. This is a classic target panic thing. So my last point, which I'm reflecting on, is the loss of focus. And as I just mentioned, when I get into the rhythm of the competition, I actually lose my focus. I tend to just look at the sight and try to make it go on target, and that's not what you're meant to do. So what I did this time around, I picked it up in my last practice session. It was kind of like a breakthrough, and today I applied it in practice. I broke down the steps of the shot process in a different way than I normally do. A lot of people will basically subconsciously draw, anchor, and aim, and then release. Because I normally merge these things together into one process, I had to deconstruct the process a bit more. And I'll take a few questions later, but I had to deconstruct the process. So what I had to do was to basically go, okay, start from scratch, stance, grip, bow grip, and all that. And then what I had to do, let me get my camera setting right here. So what I said was, okay, do not think about aiming, only think about the draw. The draw is physically demanding, it has to feel right. Don't worry about aim, the sight isn't there. So I had to say, all right, draw only. Draw only. You get up there, I felt that, I'd use the riser as a reference, a prop. So I felt the positioning of the riser correct with my hands. Alright, I will go, just draw, and I would put 100% of my effort into getting that draw correct. So I would get the stringing correctly. I would get the correct muscle use, just kind of scoop it in, whack it in, push it through and lock it, and that's a draw and hold. And then I go, alright, where's the sight? There it is. And then power it through in the last expansion using back tension. And that was my process. And you hear the voice in your head telling you the process. You hear the same thing over and over again. Trust the process. For those who are shooting, you need a process to trust. Shots aren't just random. Everything is controlled and consistent. So every time I was doing this, it was, alright, draw. And that meant I would tense my shoulders up and kind of rotate there, lock my gripping correctly, push out, and then feel the tension, and then release. And sometimes I couldn't get the sight on target correctly. It would just float off to the right something, but the brain adjusts for that. As long as I can get the draw and the anchor correct and remind myself to follow the process, I could push through. So what I'm trying to say is that I isolated each step of the shot process. When sometimes you get a bit too hasty, you do everything before you are mentally ready for it. So a lot of people will try and draw back, and then they're trying to aim, and they're holding for a very long time, and they get really tired, but they push through anyway, and they get to the clicker. So instead, what I do, what I did, and a lot of top shooters will do, is basically just focus on one thing at a time. Go draw, push, anchor, release, and your brain will automatically adjust. You have to trust the process. Instead of trying to put the dot or the sight on the target and trying to hammer bullseyes and X rings, you basically let the sight float there, execute the shot, and you naturally get a grouping. The ends where I let my brain like switch off, I let my body do everything, that's when I was shooting very consistently. Something which I used to do very often, and things that it's not what I do anymore. So being able to kind of group like in the gold, is something which is a very good recovery process. And again, when you're under pressure, when people are watching you, and when you're fatigued and you're being affected by the heat, these things can break down, and often you will pull it back, but it's wrong, and you can't finish the shot, so you're let down. But you then have to settle down, restart the process, and go through the same isolated steps. Again, the voice in here tells you draw, push, and then release. So that was probably what I got most out of my experience today. That was the isolation of particular steps which normally I don't think about. And because I knew that I was going to be under pressure, especially in very warm conditions, that after 140 hours you had to tell the same thing. If you know it's only 20 meters away, you know that if you just do the shot, it'll hit somewhere in the gold, but your brain stops you from doing so. So switch it off, go draw, push, and for me the word was push, because I don't normally push outwards very strongly. I normally collapse on my shot. So it's all about kind of bring it up, push, and that back tension felt so good. It felt really rewarding. And there were times where I didn't release well, my follow through was really crappy, kind of flopped around. But when I got that confidence, I basically just let the bow fly out. And that was kind of like, well, yeah, I didn't see where the arrow went, but that's not a bad thing. I knew it was somewhere where I was kind of aiming at. So if it wasn't, then I'll adjust my sight later on. But it allowed me to forget the things which normally plague me. And while I didn't shoot my best, I didn't shoot my worst. In fact, it's probably my best round for a long time. I began being off for 6 months and coming back and shooting at the same level or slightly higher was to me a personal highlight. I came second in my division, and the other guy was shooting really well. He's in a lot more practice than I have. Our club barebow shooter basically wiped the floor. He beat our junior compound, he beat our recurves, except for one. I just want to point out that for people who keep saying that all sites are cheating and that there's no skill, look, a good barebow shooter will be a bad recurve shooter, okay? So a bad archer is a bad archer. It doesn't matter what equipment you use, putting a sight on your bow doesn't make you shoot better. If you're shooting crap, you're shooting crap. And the fact that our barebow shooter got like the same score or higher than our recurves and some compounds just shows that, again, even with a compound bow, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to shoot extremely well. So that ends the formal part of my reflection. So those are my main talking points. It was actually a lot of mental focus. I think today was physically demanding, but my focus was less on the physical side and more on the mental side. And the mental focus allowed me to correct a lot of chronic problems which I have as an archer. And now that I've done a whole competition with a mindset which broke down each part of the shot process, I feel more confident that if I shot a round again tomorrow, then I wouldn't fall back to the same habits. But of course, you've got to push through these things, and that is what I felt was most important. And I gained a lot today. I was quite happy with the way I shot. Even though the scores were below my standard, it was to my standard for competition. So it's all growth from here, and hopefully with more time and a bit less pressure in my life, then I should be able to get out there and push through those mental barriers which hold people back. Okay, I will happily take questions now. We'll probably stick around for another 5 or 10 minutes. And again, feel free to tag my name so I can see what is going on. I know there's a few people joining in there. I'm going to scroll up for a bit. Feel free to keep asking questions, but I will scroll up very briefly to see what I've missed. Oh man, I was so dehydrated. Bad bit for my part was not bringing a water bottle with ice. I think next time I shoot, especially in Australian summer, bring an esky with like lots of cool drinks. People will love you for it. Not just soft drinks, but like water bottles, Gatorade, Powerades, fruit juices. Just like hydrate. Man, like one thing I learned, early on in my sports career. Well, I went to a session on food, on nutrition and hydration, and one thing I learned was that, man, people are chronically dehydrated. Even though at the time I was in archery is not a very intensive sport. Like you're not gonna dehydrate that quickly, but when you're in the open field for a long time, you dehydrate. And when I was teaching in my classrooms, I recognized the same symptoms of dehydration because most people don't maintain their hydration. They'll say, "Oh, sir, can I get a drink or something?" But that's like too late. Like, you're already dehydrated. It's like your car's like popped the hood and smoke's coming out there. So you're in damage control. You have to prevent dehydration, not like fix it. So one year I basically mandated water bottles in all my class. This is just a normal classroom. But again, when it's summer here, it is hot and people shut down. And as a sports coach, my mentality was, alright, everybody brings a water bottle or you get detention. You cannot go and get a drink unless you're filling a water bottle, whether it's yours or somebody else's. So we were drilling in this mentality of coming in prepared for class, not coming to sleep because you've got a headache or you're not feeling well. Most of it is dehydration. So I went to the competition not well prepared for the heat. I think in future I'm gonna invest in a good esky or cooler and bring a lot of like ice drinks. Man, you need that really, really badly. One of the things I learned the hard way today. Okay, so let's get to some questions. I'm scrolling through the earlier questions in the live feed. So, a question from Shibtaim Azim. Why is the range for compound archery 50 meters? The target size is smaller, but the advantage of okay. That's a good question. So, yeah, for those that don't know, for standard ranking rounds for compound, for recurve, they shoot 70 meters on a 122 centimeter face. Compound shooters shoot 50 meters on an 80 centimeter center. Why not make them shoot 70 meters as well? I don't know. I actually don't know. My guess is that it's more to do with a test of precision. rather than that of range. I actually don't know why, honestly. If anyone does know why, then feel free to chip in. I actually don't know the exact reason why it's 50 meters. I'm not familiar with that. But I think it's something to do with the precision factor, because you want to be able to hit a point target at 50 meters. That's quite hard as it is. But who knows these things? Let's see. Jonah Edwards, hello. I get massive knots in my shoulder and back muscles. Is this common? It shouldn't be. I don't think there's many archers who have knots in their back muscles and shoulder muscles. It's normal to feel strain and tense, but too much strain is probably a problem. So you might have that looked into. I think a few different people have been advising on different methods to get that looked at. Let's see. Takechi, very important archery question. How do you get your hair like that? Do you use any products? My hair, I'm not sure talking about me personally. I'm not really a fashionable person with hair. I don't really care that much. If you have to know, no, I don't use anything special. Just fructose shampoo. And that's basically it. I don't really do anything else with my hair. No wax, anything. So, because normally you wear a hat when you shoot anyway, so whatever you do with your hair doesn't matter because you're wearing a hat. So I don't care too much. Ray Maru, if alternative, could you try therapeutic aromatic oils and a bit of acupuncture to help with the nerves? Archery may help them by yeah. Look, that's something you could do. I don't follow alternative medicine. That's something. I mean, certain massages can be really good, but I don't really follow that sort of thing. Shayru 31. Big issue I had was keeping my left arm stable. My coach said, you are not equaling the pressure out. Try adding push to your front arm. Oh yes, that's something which is very important too. Again, this is something I don't know. I think you respond to what I said before. So what I tend to do is that I tend to pull more than I push. And you don't realize that you're off balance because you're trying to keep the bow steady. So you are pushing, but you might be like 5% imbalance, and that causes massive problems. So reminding yourself to do things like lean forward, like lean into the shot a bit more. You're actually not leaning forward, you're actually compensating for a backward lean, because most people will lean backwards and not realize it. So you might feel like you're leaning forward, but you're doing the right thing by stabilizing. But also pushing forward is a huge thing, and I actually felt that today. I actually told myself to push throughout the whole process because I don't normally push. I normally collapse in the shot. So pushing, it overcompensated for my natural error. So that's a good point there from Shayru. Yeah, when your coach tells you to push more, you push. Let's see, Angela Morley. That was not a question. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, we talk about like different styles of shooting. Yeah, try different styles. Like don't let yourself be tunneled into or funneled into like one particular style. Do what you want to do. Like again, most people who do like sport style archery probably start with bare bow, because most clubs shoot bare bow for the beginner program, and then they'll kind of go from there. And it's just great seeing people choose a style they want to do and progress really well. One of our newest members, he joined the club like 3 weeks ago, bought his bow 2 weeks ago. He shot like bare bow in our beginner program for like 3 or 4 weeks. He bought himself an SF Forge Plus bare bow, 30 pound, nice conservative, and he was learning gap shooting within the next week. And then yesterday he brought like weights for his bow, so he looked like a real bare bow shooter within like a month, and he was loving it. He was shooting like 3-4 hours. Like we were there from morning to afternoon, he was still shooting. And that's something you don't see. Like if you don't enjoy what you do, then there's just no point in doing archery. It doesn't matter what style you do, you've got to like do what you enjoy doing. And he was challenging himself to learn gaps. He wasn't doing string walking, but he was doing gap shooting. He was shooting 3 under, but it was gap shooting. And he competed today. He didn't do that well, but his first comp, he's only been shooting for 3 weeks. So he did a great job of turning up and hanging on there. So that was really good. Alright. Look at more questions. Again, tag me a name, just make it a little easier for me. Otherwise, I might miss it. Shayru again. Do you shoot the Worcester round very often? That is a, I believe, an Archery GB round. I don't know what the equivalent is. If you can tell me what the distances are, I might be able to say yes or no. I don't shoot rounds very often at all because, again, the club thing kind of shut down. So now that we're back, we'll shoot more rounds. But I don't know what the Worcester round is, and the answer is probably not. Some people could ask me like, "What's your Portsmouth score?" I don't shoot at Portsmouth. I don't shoot indoor. So I have no idea what it would be. Robin Tilburg. I come from Holland, and why are there so many good shooters from the Netherlands? That's a good question, actually. Like the Netherlands have really good shots. You have like Swift Vandenberg. He's like one of the top ranked archers right now. We've got quite a few compound shooters and recurve shooters are really good. So why? I don't know. Because you're Dutch. I don't know. Okay. A few other things here. Knocking point. Hey, go bear bow. I want to shoot bear bow often. Now that we have a few, I want to actually shoot my bear bow like from more than like 20 meters. But yeah, it's tough for me to split between my Olympic discipline and my bear bow. Like bear bow's my fun bow, but if I'm shooting seriously, I want to shoot my Olympic bow. So I don't have time to really like jump into like different styles and take it seriously. So I want to, but yeah, that is something good. GCW1313. I stumbled onto this channel maybe a week or so ago and decided to go to the local archery club yesterday. I loved it. That is beautiful. That's exactly why you should expose yourself to different things. I was talking to one of my ex-students recently, and it was actually really sad because you know, some people have lived very like introverted lives where they don't want to go out and do things. They just stay home and watch TV or play games, and there's no hunger, no desire to go out and do other things. I'm not saying you should change your life because someone else tells you to, but you don't know what you're missing out. I mean, you could spend like years of your life not doing something meaningful. In fact, actually, this is a very serious issue. I was mentoring someone years ago, and it was a disaster. Like, I'm mentoring people to become future teachers, but as a teacher, even though you might be a young person, you need to have something in your life to be proud of that shows you have some value to bring, not just as a teacher, but as a person. And if you've done nothing in your life for the last 3 or 4 years, you bring nothing as a person in the classroom. And I found that the people who are the best in the classroom have lived rich lives. Not like financial rich, but like rich lives in terms of experience, rich life experiences, and they bring the most to a classroom because they're good people all around. And when you don't try new things, then you lock yourself to a mentality which is the opposite of what teachers should be. Teachers have to expand minds, not close minds. And if you close your own mind, then you are not going to be a good teacher, and that's a fact of life. Okay, let's see. More questions. Athene losers. What are your views on the Martin Saber and Martin's company in general? Martin actually has an interesting history. I'm not familiar with Martin's history or in general. I mean, Martin used to make a lot of compound bows. And their recurve lines, like the Jaguar and the Saber, are actually repurposed compound risers. Which why the designs are a bit weird. They're compound risers. So they make, I mean, like when I started archery, like a lot of my friends were getting the Martin Jaguar because that was like the coolest bow at the time. But yeah, the company makes good bows. I think they had I'm not sure if they closed or merged or the factory burned down or something. I'm not sure, something happened a long time ago. Someone like told me like the news or something, right? Something happened, and Martin kind of like isn't a big name anymore, but they've been around for ages. And the bows are fine. They make solid, practical bows for the field. Pretty rugged stuff. I've shot the I've handled the Martin. I've held the Martin Jaguar. I've handled the Martin Saber, and I have shot the Martin Panther. So I've actually done quite a few Martin bows, and I have the Martin Cobra, which is like the fiberglass youth bow. So I've shot 4 different Martin bows, which is surprising. I've shot more Martin bows than nearly win bows. But yeah, like the Martin are pretty good all around. They're pretty like their price range is right in the middle. They make some good stuff for a lot of people. Angela Morley I was asking earlier about resources for learning traditional style. What do you do if your local clubs don't do that? Are you limited learning back out alone? It's like the fact that you shoot an alternative style to your club shouldn't stop you. You can learn from things like books. I recommend books. There aren't too many video sources. If you can find some good tutorials on YouTube for how to shoot thumb and how to draw correctly, sure. But traditional styles actually have the same problem that like Olympic archery used to have pre-NUSensei. I guess I don't know, like, be too cocky here, but the thing with archery is that the information is there, but it isn't distributed particularly well. And when I started doing Olympic archery, like, I wanted to find more about like finger taps. I wanted to find out more about sights and the shot process, and the information wasn't there. I mean, there were some things when I started. There was the biggest thing there was Performance Archery TV. It still is there, but they had a series, like a web series on how to shoot, and there were other things like Jeff Kavanagh, Grey Archer, Grizzly Jim, but they were more traditional. So there wasn't really anything for Olympic archery. That's why I made videos, was to make what is like it's common knowledge. Even things like tuning or making strings. These aren't trade secrets, but it's just really hard to distribute this across an open platform. So you will have the same problem that a lot of self-starting archers have, and that is not having the right guidance early on. Now, over time, perhaps maybe more people would teach on YouTube, but I think the best source would be doing things, reading books and experimenting. If there's no one in your club that can help you, then that'll be something that you have to overcome. We do have we still do have, we have a very good guy. He's an American who speaks like 20 languages, and he learned like Korean archery, and he is a very passionate Korean shooter. And he's not that good. I mean, he actually injured himself a while ago from a car accident, but he's very passionate about Korean archery. Actually, he gave me some of his broken arrows, and he gave me this thing where I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called the tonfa. It's the extender where you shoot the short arrows with the short draw length thing, which is really cool. So he's very passionate about that sort of thing. But yeah, like I said, if you don't have a mentor, then you'll probably have to be a self-starter and learn things by yourself. Northy, black bows and Australian summers a good mix? Not really. I mean, most bows are okay, but yeah, they're having some talks about some mention of certain limbs not performing well in Australian summers. So I can't verify that, but I've heard that sort of thing too. Sheru 31 again. Do you find that very few coaches are comfortable teaching bare bow, and will try and point more archers to sighted? I think I would agree with that. Depends on where you are and what coach you have. My own coach, he has shot recurve. He used to compete recurve, he used to compete compound, and now he shoots bare bow completely fine. So he has a well-rounded background. I guess, I don't know, I've had both experiences of positive support as well as negative thing. The thing with bare bow is that bare bow is one of the hardest ways to learn how to shoot, because not only are you learning the fundamentals of archery, you're also learning without any assistance in aiming. I know some people have mentioned that sights make it easy and so on. Well, sights actually isolate the learning process, because you can focus on the release, you can focus on the anchor point, and not worry about where your bow is aiming. The difficult thing with bare bow is that it's hard to diagnose exactly what's wrong. So if you say you're shooting at 20 meters and you hit 6 o'clock blue, then you don't know whether it was your shot, it was your release, it was your back tension, or whether you was aiming in the wrong place. So as a learner, it's much more challenging to isolate exactly what went wrong. That might be why some coaches will push you more towards sighted recurve, because at least you have a more stable learning platform. The learning curve is much gentler with sighted recurve. That said, the mastery of sighted recurve is very high, and a lot of people don't get there. but the learning curve from the beginning is quite easy. Some people go from sighted to bare bow after they learn the fundamentals of the shot process. I mean, for me personally, I started with bare bow, then went to Olympic, then nowadays I shoot trad bare bow for fun, and I have no problem shooting, apart from the fact that I can't anchor properly because I had the wrong tab. I do enjoy shooting, and a lot of people think Olympic archers can't shoot in, like, practical situations. I'm pretty sure any Olympic archer can repurpose their skills immediately. So yeah, I've heard of similar experiences. I mean, personally, if I don't shoot compound, but I wouldn't stop people shooting compound. In fact, coaching compound isn't that hard. There are a few technical things you have to pick up, but the actual shot process isn't that much different. Byron Cook mentions another good thing to take to Aussie summers is a golf umbrella. Absolutely, you need shade. A lot of tournaments have gazebos, which people set up, but any sort of shade is really, really important. Whew, okay, we're going through a lot of questions here. Let's have a look. Alright, Drake Hyena. Is it dangerous or bad to train outdoors in cold weather? No, it's not dangerous. Apart from, if you get hit by a giant snowball, I don't think so. Is it bad? No. I mean, any situation where you can train, it's a good situation. And you don't have a choice, really. I mean, it doesn't snow here, like that cold weather, but it's not dangerous at all. You just have to adapt to the conditions. A lure deal. I have a 34-pound wooden takedown, same age. It's starting to feel too light. I want to get a Western traditional bow, like a bare bow, around 50 pounds. Will it be a huge jump? Yes. 34 pound to 50 pound is extremely high. Most people will go up, say, 5 pounds. 10 pounds is really pushing it. 15 pounds or 16 pound is what many archers will probably say is insane. Even as a conservative recommendation, I wouldn't say go more than 5 pound. If I'm being a bit more flexible, considering you don't want to buy more than, say, 2 or 3 limbs, then maybe 10 pound. But keep your light limbs to work in. 16 pound is way too high. Like, again, I mean, if it feels way too light, remember that, are you shooting well? Like, it might feel light, but do you have control of the shot process? Because if you don't control the shot process, then you are when you move to 50 pound, you're going to shoot terribly. And moving up too soon without consolidating your form will set you back months or if not years, because now you're unlearning good technique, and you're struggling with a heavy draw weight, and you're trying to learn good technique with heavy draw weight. So I would recommend an intermediate weight, like go from 34 to maybe 40, 44, 45, and then go to 50 or above. So I reckon, in my opinion, as a coach, an intermediate step would be a better option, but it's your call to make. And I just skipped off 10,000 questions there. Alright, back down here. PB and Alabinos, good name. When you buy a bow, how do you know if it will fit your hand? All bows have standard grips. I want to again show you the Samick Bear Hunter or the Samick Discovery. All bows have this grip. Hand size for a bow isn't a problem, because it's basically a standard grip. It's like, will a pistol fit your hand? Most pistols have the same grip, so you don't need to worry about fitting to your hand, because there's nothing which you need to worry about. The main thing for size would be some risers and some grips are thicker than others, so if you have big hands, you might feel more comfortable with a thicker design. But apart from that, every riser will fit your hand. There is no real difference there. So that's a good question, actually. Didn't think about that. Good question there. Alright, I think I missed a question before from Daryl Smith. Why is the D-loop and mechanical release only used with compound if it helps with accuracy? That's a good question. If you talk about the rule set, the rules are basically that for recurve, I think the recurve rules are meant to stick with the original intent of the recurve. So it's, even though you have sights and stabilizers, you still have to be part of the shot itself. Having a mechanical release aid removes part of the shot process, and I think that's what the line is drawn. Sights, you're still gonna, like, people who use sights, have to align the same way a bare bow shooter has to align the tip of the arrow. So in some way, people will sight, whether with a accessory or with a bare bow. But a mechanical release aid actually does replace part of the shot process. Having a clean release is essential. Now, of course, trigger control on a mechanical release aid is very important, but I think it does form a it does remove part of the shot process. Some people do so in hunting situations, but in competition, it kind of removes part of the purpose of recurve. The other problem, and this is in general for D-loops and mechanical release aids, is that compounds benefit from this because you have the let off. The let off allows you to hold the bow full draw with much less effort. With recurve, remember, the compound, once you get past that that initial pull, then you have a very light hold. It gets easier when you get back here. For recurve, it gets harder when you get back here. So remember, you're pulling maybe 40-50 pounds at full draw. It's a lot harder to get good control on your release aid if you're holding that weight. So you don't have the luxury of a long hold as a compound shooter would. So it's not as practical. So again, good question from PB and Jalapenos. Yeah, sorry, that wasn't it. No, that was Daryl Smith. Didn't tag me there. But yeah, that's probably the reason why you don't see it very often. Sebastian PR Ginter. I saw on one of your videos that you wore a shirt of the German club. Have you been in Germany? I haven't been to Germany. That was a shirt sent to me. I do occasionally welcome people to send club shirts to get some representation. I'm not wearing one right now. This is a win-win shirt. But I called it the Shirt Out Project. I ran it in 2016. I didn't launch one this year, but perhaps in the coming year, I'll do another Shirt Out project. So it's more of like a thank you shout out thing, but wearing a shirt. So I do a lot of videos, right? So having any club, like, you know, say, oh, that's my club shirt there. That's really cool. It's a fun thing, really. Nothing serious. But no, I haven't been to Germany. It would be nice to go there though, but I haven't been there yet. Anson Kiss, the books With Winning in Mind and Bullseye in Mind are excellent books dealing with the mental aspect of shooting sports. Did these books influence your shooting competition? I haven't read those books. The only thing I've read extensively is Rick McKinney's The Simple Art of Winning. That is a very good book. Rick McKinney was a former world champion, very good shooter. And I have his book. In fact, my coach has a signed version from Rick McKinney. In fact, the club has because Rick McKinney came to Australia a few decades back, and he shot around, and we actually have the target that he shot autographed and one of his arrows with his name on it too. So yeah, and our coach has the autographed Rick McKinney book. I have my own copy, but obviously not autographed. Just bought it a few months ago. Ryan Smith, is it bare bow brand or bare bow, in other words, style? When I talk about bare bow, I talk about the style, so like the naked bow or the bare bow. That's what most people talk about when I say bare bow, is the naked bow. For people talking about bare bows for the brand, they normally have a context. So when people say bare bow, it's always going to be the style. Max Salinger, the second. I've been wanting to get into archery for a while, but the only local archery store requires that you buy a bow before you get access to the range. Should I spend $100 or get a kid's bow? Oh, that's a tough question. A range that requires you to buy a bow, that's silly. Rent a bow, sure, but buy a bow, that should not be a requirement, unless it's a club. Unless it's like a private club or private business, which doesn't have bows. Yeah, that's a bit different then. So if you want to try archery, I recommend you find a club or range which has lessons. I wouldn't buy a bow and bring it to a private range. If you do want to buy a bow, spend $100 on a decent takedown recurve. Don't buy a kid's bow. Kids' bows do not give you the right feedback. And by kids' bows, I assume you mean the fiberglass bows, like the $20 ones. No, you will not. That's not archery. If it is anything is fake archery, it's not what Lars Anderson does. That's a reference there. It's not what Lars Anderson does. It's what kids do with the £20 bows, or with the $20 bows, which are £10. That's fake archery. You won't get it right for that. I recommend you actually do get a decent bow. People ask about like the Mandarin Duck Phantom. That's a cheap bow. It's a decent bow, but it's not a very good beginner bow. But if you're gonna spend a minimum price, that's an option as well. But get a decent bow. Even if you find that you don't like archery, that bow will sell for the same price, because even though it might be used, so you might sell for a bit less, but the bow is just as good used as it would be brand new, so you can easily pass on somebody else. Thank you, Oblique CMN. Yeah, Martin had a fire. I thought so. Yeah, Martin had a big fire in the compound factory. That was like a few years back. It wasn't that long ago, actually. It was in the news on the Martin page. That's a pretty big hit for the company. Li Jishuan, have you got to try the new Win-Win ATF? I haven't used the ATF, unfortunately. The closest thing I have is the Win-Win AL1, which was the predecessor to the ATF. I haven't used the ATF. That is an aluminium design. It's probably more in line with the Inno AXT, but the AXT is the CXT design by aluminium. The ATF is a more solid frame. It's a pretty good design. I mean, the AL1 ATF are very similar, but the TFT is a much different beast compared to the ATF. Rafael M, what changes would you make to make target archery? What changes would you make to target archery to make archery great again? Hashtag MAGA. Make archery great again. What changes would it make? More events, I reckon. It's tough because you have the Olympic round, which is a knockout tournament. I mean, in general, I'd say that the competition for the person doing it is very intense. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. A lot of people will disagree. They'll say that the knockout round is terrible because it's all about luck and all that sort of thing. But it's there. You can't really argue that you can't use it anymore. So it's still there. Target archery, I think, is okay. Archery in general would benefit from more events on a large scale, so more field, more 3D, and I really want to give bare bow a shot. So anyone who wants to do bare bow, I reckon the best way is to have similar to the ISSF shooting events, where you have like rifle and air rifle and pistol, rifle 3 positions, rapid fire pistol, that we actually incorporate different kinds of competitions. Now I know target archery is all about accuracy, not speed, so I'm not interested in a speed competition. That's not the purpose of target archery or sport archery. But having like a bare bow division, even if you shoot at say 40 meters, like that way people will stop complaining about, oh, Olympic archers are unskilled. Have the freestyle division and have the bare bow division. It's tough. I don't think the ROC will approve that, but actually having a bare bow as a world event would be a much better thing. At the moment, bare bow is only used for field and 3D. But in my opinion, for target archery, have bare bows division. Make it an actual thing, and if you have it as an actual thing, more people will do it, and that means the standards will increase. Good question, Rafael. Steph, what activities would you recommend to support archery when you are, for example, away from home and not your shoot? Any physical activity, really. Like, if you want to go to the gym, go to the gym. Do weight training. Apart from that, there's rock climbing is really good as well. Swimming, rock climbing, and gym work. That's what I recommend. That will give you some really good cross training. Let's see. Oh, thanks to Catherine for the references to the books there. Arab Archery, the art of shooting a short reflex bow. I want to check these things out and make it some time. I might buy a thumb ring at some point and actually review my horse bow and learn to shoot that. What time's in Australia? It's currently 1 AM here. Depends on which part of Australia, by the way. Australia's big. Robert, can you help me buy a recurve bow? I would recommend you check my video on choosing your first bow. That will basically cover everything you need to know, really. It's pretty comprehensive. Juan Berrio, if you were to buy your first riser and you had $500 to $800 available, would allow you to choose between carbon and aluminium, which one you prefer? Very, very good question. This is such a personal thing. Aluminium bows feel like they're muscle cars. They're very solid, high performance designs. Carbon is a bit more elegant. I am personally more on the carbon side. Sorry, Hoyt, but I do like my carbon bows. I do like the balance and feel of carbon, and the feedback feels just more right to me. But aluminium is really nice, but I'd still go towards carbon. Aluminium's not bad though. Alright. Oh yeah, Tim Luzak, Archery 101, that's Greg by the way, so Greg Richards, he does 3D Archery and Archery 101, he has a 9-part series on entire shot sequence. The funny thing was I actually wanted to do something like that when I did YouTube like 4 years ago. I do one general beginner video on your first day, and I wanted to do separate things for all parts of the shot process. Now I didn't end up doing that, but I actually have covered nearly every step in some way in a specialized video. One of my future projects will be to do a shot sequence video, just one rather than a 9-part series. Basically going through each step in a more simple way, because I don't really have a how to shoot video. I've got like 100 other videos, but not one how to shoot video. So that's going to be like the one-stop shop for basically for anyone picking up a bow. This is how you shoot it. That's what I want to do. But yeah, the one that Greg did on Archery 101 is nice. It's nice because he not only like demonstrates it, he discusses things about it. And the 9-part series means that you can have like 10 minutes for each video rather than covering everything in 10 minutes. That's really hard, but I'll try that. Alright, Tritson, hello dear people in NUSensei. I'm curious about one thing. How do you keep the record of your settings for different distances? Book, mobile phone, or head? Yeah, look, notepad, mobile phone, or apps can help you too. And of course, you start memorizing things. So especially if you shoot the same distance all the time, you know, oh yeah, my 50-meter setting is 5.0 and so on. So yeah, like all three, really. How much for the Bear Hunter? The Samick Bear Hunter, the one I have, you can't buy it anymore, I think. And now there's Samick Discovery, which is like sold by one shop in the US. This one's from Merlin Archery, or more specifically from Grizzly Jim. He probably got from Merlin Archery, but yeah, I didn't actually buy this. I donated to Grizzly Jim's campaign for the World Championships, and he sent me this extra riser as a thank you, which is pretty cool. I mean, the bear takedown was even cooler, but that's pretty nice too. If you remember, I trolled my viewers by showing that instead of the bear recurve. Alright. Oh man, we're getting overtime. Hey, if we just keep on asking, I should sleep at some point and go to work, but at the moment this is pretty cool. Hieratic Manny, did you always live in Australia? Yes, I was born here and I've always lived here. Never moved anywhere else. Henrik, is there any point to buying a bow more than 60 pounds for target? No. That's excessive for target. I mean, you can shoot 70 meters with a 35-pound bow just fine, or 30-pound bow. So you don't need more than 60, like 50-pound. I mean, it's really hard to get a 60-pound bow. Like most commercial limbs cap out at like 45 to 50 pounds. You need to buy like a custom limb to get 60 pounds. But why would you do that? The big part is, you know, you are shooting could be hundreds of arrows per day. 60 pound is not sustainable. If you're hunting, then sure, 60 pounds is okay because you're not doing 100 shots per day, even with conditioning. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend 60 pounds. Like you don't gain that much. Sure, it's a faster arrow, but you know you're basically shooting compound spines with a 60-pound bow. But just the control that you have is really tough. It's not worth it. Okay, and any questions? By the way, yeah, there is no maximum draw weight for a recurve bow. The World Archery rules specify 60 pound for compound, but not for recurve. I think the compound is that it's meant to be a competition of skill. Once you get to a high enough draw weight, it becomes basically shooting a laser. So that becomes less about like individual skill and more about just point the thing at the target and just push the trigger. That's not the same competition. Also safety as well. You don't want to shoot like overpowered compound bows in competition, because if you misfire, it's going to do a lot more damage and be more of a hazard to the environment than a 60-pound bow. And also remember that because the World Archery rules have to cater for the club level and the grassroots. So you know, for the ranges are set up so that you can probably shoot a 60-pound compound and it won't overshoot the range. Whereas if you have a higher compound draw weight, then that means you need a much larger range for safety, and that's probably not sustainable for archery clubs. The only draw rate restriction I know of is youth. and that's more for national level rather than world level. But I think national level, it restricts, if you're shooting in a youth division, you can't shoot above a certain draw weight. I think that's to even the playing field, because kids will grow at different rates. So if you have a 12-year-old who is super tall and strong, and he uses a 40-pound bow, he's going to smash a 12-year-old who's not smaller. So I think that's the only limitation I know of. But what archery wise, there's no compound, there's no recurve max draw weight. It's all about what you can draw. Robert, what do you think is a good reasonable price for a recurve bow and the draw weight for it? If you're buying one online, again, watch my video series. I've covered everything you possibly can. I recommend you budget about $200 US. Your bow might only cost like 100 or 120, but you budget a bit more because you need to buy things like the arrows and the accessories. But if I had to recommend just a bow that you want to get sent straight to your door, spend about $150 on a wooden takedown recurve, like a Samick Polaris or Samick Sage even, and get around 25 pounds weight. 30 pound if you want to be more of a man, but 25 pound is what I recommend. That I think 25 pound is a nice cross between a bow that is light and easy to learn with and fun to use, and also one that can actually shoot things. 25 pound can be fine up to 30-40 meters. 30 pound is probably what I recommend for like the average person. If you only buy one bow in your life, 30 pound is probably okay, but you're starting to push what most people can do without any training. Fire Clown, have I ever shot an English longbow? No, I haven't. I've seen someone who actually makes it and shot alongside me, but I personally haven't shot an English longbow. Okay. And someone mentioned camo before. One of the things I'll do, I'm going to go through the World Archery rules again. I'm going to go through the interpretations, because they do clarify the compound rule. They've done it several times in different releases, but I do want to talk about camo a bit more, because people are really up in arms about camouflage and you can't wear camo or denim jeans even. So there's some nice clarifications we'll go through in more detail. But now that we've reached about over like an hour, nearly an hour and a half, I reckon we will end it there. I'll take last questions. I'll give you about 30 seconds to ask a question, and then I'm heading off, because it is 1:15 AM and it is a work day. I mean, after my competition, I was so thirsty. I drank everything. I bought like a frozen Sprite from Hungry Jack's. Then made an iced coffee at home, and then I guzzled down like every fruit juice I had. Oh man, but when you're in that mindset of like it's freaking hot, then I'm kind of like overloading. I'm overhydrating now rather than before the comp. But pro tip: if it's a hot day, bring a water bottle. Drink one whole bottle every like hour or so, and you'll be fine. Like, you'll be functioning with other people like putting their heads down and having a migraine. Really recommend that you hydrate. Like, seriously, when you have a hydration regimen, a hydration routine, you perform to a higher level in your daily life rather than having to deal with the migraines. Last questions. Whoa, okay, geez, this will be a long time. Quick questions. Iron Pirate, welcome back. Camera on bare bow could be used as a sighting aid. No. That's not what the rule says. The rule specifies for bare bow especially. It talks about the markings on the window of the riser, not the bow itself. I mean, look, if you have like a chip on the paint job of your bow, you can use that as a sighting mark, but I don't think that's the intention of camo. Camouflage isn't designed for that. That's not the point of that. It's probably like harder to use camo as a reference point than just learn how to gap. There's definitely more of an image thing than anything else. The problem with the camo rules is that the rules don't specify why. The rules only say what is and isn't permitted. It doesn't explain why. And the interpretations are the same sort of thing here. When you see the World Archery interpretations, they don't elaborate on that. Now, the elaboration might be in media releases and press releases. but you don't see official documents to say this is why the rules in place. That's why things like the compound max raw weight, they'll say max 60 pound. It doesn't say why, so you have to kind of figure out why. And sometimes it's really obvious, but most times, usually it's just not very clear. Byron Cook, ACEs or X10s, depends on your budget. If you're not a pro level shooter, get ACEs. One, they're slightly cheaper. Two, they're slightly better in most conditions. The X10s are really good in windy conditions. They are slightly heavier, and they have a better wind profile. Basically, they've done testing on this, and the X10s are actually superbly good in wind. So if you're shooting long distance, 70 meters, and there's some crosswind, then the X10s are amazing. That's why they're used for all competitions, because we always assume there's wind and they're going to shoot well. ACEs, however, are very good performing arrows. They're generally better rounded for most things. So if there's no wind, some shooters will use ACEs over X10s, but X10s have better performance in wind. If you're shooting things like field or 3D, then ACEs are probably better than X10s. If you're shooting short distance, ACEs might still be better than X10s. If you're shooting like a 50 meter round, ACEs might be better, because again, the wind profile isn't that big for 50 meters or 40 meters. But for budget wise, I recommend ACEs. X10s are your professional step. I mean, if you buy them, you'll love them. But I feel that when I bought my X10s, I wasn't good enough to make the arrows count. So yeah, just to choose what you think you deserve. You might go from ACs to X10s. But yeah, I didn't feel that I made the right choice, because I ran out of ACEs, so I thought might as well get X10s, see what the big fuss is about. They're amazing arrows, by the way, really good arrows. They come out so nicely. But yeah, I recommend ACEs personally. Henry, compound or recurve for the first bow? Recurve. If you want to shoot compound, then you buy a compound. But if you want to learn archery, learn with recurve, because you learn all the fundamentals of recurve, and it's closer to what archery is. You can transfer the skills to compound. If you start with compound, you can learn the archery of compound, but you don't really learn the same fundamentals as a recurve archer. So many compound shooters will have trouble transferring to recurve, whereas recurve shooters should be able to go to compound with less trouble. Stumping points. So 1973, cheap options for stumping points, judo points, I guess. I don't stump, so I don't really have a recommendation specifically. Other people can help out there, so I don't really know. Oh yeah, Catherine, good question. Yeah, you need salt. Oh yeah. One of the things is one of the big things is when you dehydrate, you don't just lose your fluids, you lose electrolytes. You need to recover salt. So having salty snacks is a good thing. I hate salt and vinegar, by the way. But yeah, like salty snacks like potato chips are actually a really good idea. So you eat your chips and you also like scald down your water. If you drink water by itself, you don't actually hydrate. It actually can be bad for you if you hydrate without the replacement of electrolytes. That's a really good point. Thanks, Catherine. That is an excellent reminder. One last question from Kilman Pitt. I'm wondering on beginning my archery journey with it's 1:20 AM, okay? I'm wondering on beginning my journey with archery. I just want to have some fun in my backyard. I usually have time only in late evenings, so I'm worried about lighting. Any help? Indoor. If you like shooting in the dark, it's not an easy thing to do. I know some will say you get like the LED knocks which are light up, but that's not the same as shooting. That's good for hunting and low light situations, not good for learning to shoot. If you're gonna like shoot in evenings, then what I recommend is you find a comfortable indoor space in your home or whatever you can shoot, in your garage or whatever, and just shoot like 3 meters. It might not be satisfying, I know, but if you're gonna learn to shoot in the closest and safest environment. Yes, I don't like salt and vinegar. I can eat it, but I find it too sour for me. Like, the vinegar's too sour. Like I don't mind salt in general, but in terms of potato chip flavors, this is kind of trivia for NUSensei stuff here. I am very fond of chicken as a flavor. Chicken, sour cream and onion, or sour cream chives, a great favorite. And more recently, things like honey soy chicken are very popular. I don't mind that. Barbecue is really good too. But yeah, I find that I do not like salt and vinegar. It doesn't appeal to me. Just the smell and the sour taste. It doesn't click with me here. And the funny thing, that was like the original flavor, apart from salted. Yeah, like salt and vinegar is very traditional, but I did not like salt and vinegar. The funny thing was, like, I think someone actually did mention in my training course that salt and vinegar was recommended specifically as a flavor for potato chips because it is salty and kind of vinegary. But yeah, I can't stand it. Matthew Walden, recent subscriber. I've been learning about archery this range, started on recurve. Can't seem to have the strength for a 20-30 pound draw. I'm sure there's a question there somewhere, but yeah, it's not abnormal. I mean, we give like 12-pound bows to adults sometimes because like again, some people do not have the upper body strength. And because you don't normally use these archery muscles, like unless you've done things like swimming or rowing, you probably don't have the right muscular build to do archery with good control. It takes time, and you know, if you shoot consistently, then 20 to 30 pound is it's a very good thing to. I mean, it's easy to work towards 30 pounds. Let's put it that way. But you need to shoot around more regularly. Ajin Song, apparently keeping both eyes open while shooting is a must in Olympic recurve. In general, like if you have the ability to use both eyes for anything like shooting or in most things in your life, then 2 eyes is better because we are binocular creatures. We acquire things better with 2 eyes. We say it's like more powerful. What that means is it's easier to acquire your sight picture and maintain vision on target with both eyes. It's kind of hard to do for a lot of people, but it is a normal thing to do. You don't see like one eye shooting like this. That's kind of, you put pressure in your face. Now for those who are cross-dominant, they might have to put an eye patch, and some people shoot really well with one eye, but you normally learn with 2 eyes because again you have that binocular vision, you have better depth and better alignment most of the time. Yeah, and like I think at some point I'm gonna do a general AMA. Like we have, like, it's the end of the month, so we do our archery Q&A. But I normally do my milestone, like ask me anything. I did for 25k, but I jumped to like 54k subscribers like yesterday. So I wanna perhaps think about doing a general Q&A. So you can ask me about my favorite potatoes, crisp flavors and something. Because by now it's more like, you know, we've gone beyond just archery. It's more about like everything, like life and teaching in general. But yeah, I might organize that at some point, maybe towards the end of the year. It's a late way to discuss you know, just random things. It'd be a very late 50k celebration, but hey, whatever. Full Red made a good point there. Like, this is an archery like reflection, and we're talking about potato chips. That means it's time to go. So thank you very much. Thank you to Catherine for the $2 tip that did remind me to go to sleep. I think we will end there. So yes, we are literally getting salty in the comments. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.